never gave you nothing. The lease was safe. The dog had a loving home. And Jack Tripper decided he really, truly needed to stop cooking with marrow jelly. Chapter 3: The Hero of the Pub. The neighborhood pub, the Regal Beagle, was the trio's sanctuary. It was a place of dim amber lights, the smell of stale beer and popcorn, and a soundtrack of 70s rock that provided the perfect backdrop for their weekly escapes from the pressures of apartment 201. But one Saturday night, the sanctuary became a gauntlet of humiliation. It started with a man who could only be described as a human mountain. He was broad-shouldered, wore a denim vest that looked like it was holding back a tidal wave of muscle, and possessed a grin that suggested he hadn't heard the word no since the Eisenhower administration. He was currently leaning over Jeanne and Chrissy's table, ignoring Jack entirely. "Come on, Blondie," the mountain said to Chrissy, his voice a deep rumble. "Let's go for a ride in my boat. I got a 35-foot cabin cruiser waiting at the marina. We can see the stars. And I have a 5'10" roommate who's about to lose his cool." Jana snapped, her eyes darting to Jack, pleading for him to say something, anything to make this man go away. Jack, usually the first to jump into a fray with a witty remark, hesitated. This wasn't a clumsy landlord or a confused secretary. This man was enormous. His fists were the size of Jack's entire head. "Look, pal," Jack said, his voice coming out an octave higher than he intended. "I think the ladies are busy. We're having a very important cultural discussion. Why don't you go sail your boat somewhere far away, like the mid-Atlantic?" The man turned his gaze to Jack. It was the slow, deliberate turn of a predator noticing a particularly talkative mouse. "You saying something, runt? You got a problem with me talking to the ladies? I'm saying we're all together in a non-confrontational, peaceful, let's all be friends sort of way." The man laughed, a sound like gravel being turned in a cement mixer. He reached out and flicked Jack's tie with a finger. "I'll be back tomorrow, babe," he said to Chrissy, ignoring Jack's existence once more. "Don't bring the toothpick next time. He might get stuck in the garbage disposal." As the man swaggered away, his laughter echoing against the wood-paneled walls, the silence at the table was suffocating. "You okay, Jack?" Chrissy asked softly, her brow furrowed with genuine concern. "Fine," Jack muttered, staring intently at his beer. I didn't want to cause a scene. Violence is the last refuge of the incompetent. My father always said, he who fights and runs away lives to feel like a coward the next day." Jana finished for him, her voice sharp with disappointment. She wasn't hiding it well. She wanted a protector, and what she had was a man who had just been flicked. For the next 24 hours, Jack was a ghost in his own home. He skipped his usual pratfalls. He burnt the morning toast until it was blacker than coal. He sat in front of the television, staring at cartoons without a single chuckle. He was haunted by the ghosts of his past, specifically Fat Kenny Jensen, the elementary school bully. He had paid a nickel a day just to avoid being stuffed into a locker. "I'm yellow, Johnny," he confessed later that night, sitting in the dark living room. "I've got chicken in my blood. I'm a coward. I let that guy insult you both, and I just sat there like a lump of wet clay." "You're not a coward, Jack," Jana said, her voice softening as she saw the genuine pain in his eyes. "You were just being smart. That guy was huge. He could have broken you in half." "David was small," Jack countered. "And Goliath still ended up with a massive headache. I wish I stood up for you guys. I wish I was the man Stanley thinks I am. Wait, no, not that man, but a man nonetheless. Opportunity for redemption or complete physical destruction arrived the following evening. They were back at the pub, mostly because Jack insisted on facing his fears, though his knees were visibly shaking under the table. The mountain returned, and this time he wasn't alone. He had brought a friend who looked equally menacing, and they were both looking for a target to entertain themselves. "Hey, look, it's the toothpick and his hens. Still haven't found a real man to hang out with. Girls." Jack stood up. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped, panicked bird. He looked at Johnny. He looked at Chrissy. He thought about the pride in Jeanette's eyes when he had bought back the cameo. He couldn't let them see him crawl again. "That's enough," Jack said. This time, his voice was steady, anchored by a sudden, desperate resolve. The mountain loomed over him, the smell of cheap cologne and aggression radiating off him. "You want to go, little man. You want to see what happens when you bark at the big dogs." "No," Jack said. "I don't want to, but I will, because you're being a creep. You're insulting my friends. You're a bore. And you're ruining everyone's night." The mountain pulled back a massive fist. The entire pub went silent. Even the jukebox seemed to stop playing. Suddenly, a voice boomed from the doorway, sharp and irritable. "Hold it right there. What's all this racket?" It was Stanley Roper. He was holding a bag of laundry and looking particularly grumpy because his favorite brand of detergent was out of stock. He didn't know the context of the standoff, but he saw his tenant, the one who kept the peace upstairs, being threatened by a giant in denim. "Roper," the mountain sneered, looking down at the landlord. "Get lost, old man. This doesn't concern you." Stanley squinted, his lower lip curling. He didn't like being called an old man. "Who you calling old? I served in the war. Kid, I've seen bigger, uglier things than you in my morning soup. You're blocking the path to the bar." Stanley stepped right up to the mountain, eyeball to navel. The mountain, surprisingly, hesitated. There was something about the sheer, stubborn, oblivious audacity of the little man in the plaid leisure suit that gave him pause. Was he crazy? Was he armed? Taking advantage of the distraction, Larry Dallas, who had been watching the scene with a mix of amusement and alarm from the bar, leaned over and whispered into the mountain's ear. "I wouldn't hit him if I were you, pal," Larry said, pointing a thumb at Jack. "Why not? He's a toothpick." The steel plate